Hello, welcome back to episode 2 of To Be Later Named podcast about games. I don't know. This is episode 2 post the Game Awards. Big news came out of the Game Awards, and that's where we're actually going to start with this one. But before we get there, Patrick,
Mm-hmm.
how's it going? How are you feeling today?
Ooh, little tie tie. Had a crazy weekend traveling to Peoria, Illinois for to play in a massive One Piece card game tournament. But that's not what we're here to talk
Mm.
about. I won't drag you
But
down
how
the
did it go?
details.
That's we all want to know.
Ooh, one of my buddies made top cut, which if you aren't initiated to card game tournaments means was good enough to be in the top 32 and played in the second day of tournament play. And he got some really cool prizes because of that. I did not do so well, but we live and we learn and we move on. The
We're
current
in it for the love of the game.
That's what I told all of my opponents towards the end of Saturday. I'm like, I'm just here for the love of the sport. That's where I'm at with that. But it was fun. How
All
are
right.
you doing?
Oh, I also was traveling over the weekend. I went to San Francisco to see the Titans play.
Ooh, I
It was
remember
better
that.
than I thought. They still lost, but
Ooh, that's all right. That's all
that's
right.
a sick reference. Wrong podcast. That's for the movie podcast. But
Well,
uh,
Packers didn't
one
win. Packers lost quite a bit.
no,
It
they
turns
did
out.
not. That was a bad day for the
Yeah,
Packers.
we might
Anyway,
be out
back to
anyway.
video games. What we're here to talk about.
Hmm.
Patrick, we had the Game Awards. We
Sure
were
did.
live when it happened,
Hmm.
and you'd absolutely destroyed us in the competition of picking the I guess winners technically is what you call it, but in the draft.
Hmm.
What did you think of the show overall, and who won the awards?
Man, the Game Awards is such a special show to me. Every year, I've been watching it live every year for at least the last 5 years, maybe. I've been a big fan of it for a long time, and it's such a special little experience to get to do with what we do with it every year, where we draft who we think's gonna win. And I know John doesn't care about the video game industry at large, but even he gets into it. So it's a special thing for me when all three of us can sit down and watch. But this year felt I come from a place of last year being the 10th anniversary of the Game Awards and feeling just fine.
Mm.
And then I compare it to this show, and like we'll get to it in a little bit, but we went through some of our favorite reveals and announcements, and between some of the stuff we got there and almost half, if not half, of the Game of the Year contenders being indie games, this year just felt special. It felt like a cut above most other years. So I still have my issues with it. Of course, there's still plenty of things you can talk about with the Game Awards, but overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was a good show. I'm trying to remember. We even when we were doing the live show,
Hmm.
I get they all blend together for me in some ways. I'm like,
Yeah,
did this happen last year or the year before that?
I totally get that.
So it's hard to compare it like from an announcement level, but there was a lot of good announcements here. The Expedition 33 winning the most awards in Game Awards history at 9 was expected, but also kind of took a little bit out of the awards part of it. I know that's not, I mean, if you're really there for the awards, the Game Awards is really not the show for it. It's like,
No.
probably the BAFTAs or something along those lines.
Hmm.
Um, but nonetheless, that is the central premise of the show. And I don't know. Like I said, it's great that Expedition 33 won all of them. Or, they deserved to win a bunch of awards. But it did feel kind of like, I guess, other than sound design, they won every single one they were in, right?
Yeah, unless you want to argue that Ben Starr and Charlie Cox not winning Best Performance was also a snub, even though Jennifer English won that award anyway.
Right.
But I think it won most, if not all, the other categories it was nommed for. So, yeah,
Mhm.
very good
Did you feel
show.
like there were any people who were snubbed from the awards getting the award, not necessarily being on the list?
Um, Gosh, the big one for me is Blueprints. I feel like they had such a moment
Mm.
beginning of the
Hmm.
year where everyone was playing it, and like by playing it, I mean like playing it like for hundreds of hours and
Yeah.
still finding new stuff. And it kind of feels like people almost forgot about it. And I know we've had some really big hits like Hollow Knight, Hades 2, Expedition 33 that have come out since, but I really feel like Blueprints got overshadowed a little bit for how impressive of a game that is. That's my
Yeah,
one.
game feels like in a different year, it's just absolutely slated to win Best Debut Indie or Best Independent Game or something like one of those two awards. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's just slated for that, and it just came in a year in which an indie game was just dominant. I mean, it feels the same for like Dispatch, right? Like that feels like a game that could have
True.
easily won one of those awards too. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, well, unfortunately, it came out in a year where an indie game, and who some people will argue whether or not that's an indie game. I don't know if we want to get into that here, but uh,
Ah.
it it was a dominant win
Mm-hmm.
across the board. The big snub for me was, or I don't know. I mean, Expedition 33 should have won, um, but KCD 2 not winning Best RPG. I feel like
That's.
that is one where I
Mm-hmm.
expected KCD 2 was going to get one of the awards, um, but it was clear, I think, in this show that there was no like I don't know what you want to call it, tit for tat of like, oh, well, we're going to give this award to this game, so we'll give this other award to this game
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that everyone's like, uh, getting a piece of the pie. They kind of were just like, nope, Expedition 33 is the game, and so it's going to get all of the awards it deserves to get.
Yeah, the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 one actually was yeah, now you mentioning that really reminded me that that probably should. I don't even remember what won best role playing game. If you recall, was that another
There's
Expedition
Expedition
33
33.
joint?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay, because like I know, I everything I hear about Kingdom Come 2 is like it's as role playing as it gets. Like you are a person living in Prague during like the Middle Ages, and it just feels very like extremely simmy, almost to the point of like Red Dead Redemption 2 living as a cowboy. Like it's to that level of minutia, if not more so. And it just kind of confusing because I know there are panels across the world that vote on this stuff. It's not just the U.S. or Japan or whatever. So I thought maybe there'd be a strong European showing for it, but I guess France is also in Europe, so whatever. But
Sure.
I don't know.
Also, got to send a special shout out to Erika Ishii when she's just eating popcorn while her award nomination choice is being made.
Yeah,
That was an incredible bit of cinema there.
no, Erica's the best. Like I don't know. I follow some of her D&D stuff. She's just great overall. So shout out to her.
Hmm. But talking about snubs and even I guess Erika Ishii in this case,
Mm-hmm.
I want to propose a potential change to the Game Awards. Much like people want to have in America for voting, I think we should have ranked choice voting for the Game Awards. And here's why. Uh, Expedition 33 still would have won all of the games, or all of the awards it won, right? Um, and so it gets the recognition it wants. But let's take Best RPG as an example. I'm gonna, make this up, but I would say out of that list, KCD2 is the second best RPG on that list.
Mm-hmm.
So, the award comes on the show. We announce that Expedition 33 wins it, but then on the screen, it's got like a second place, third place sign, and it's got, KCD2 here and Outer Worlds 2 as third, or whatever one you want to put third. Probably not Outer Worlds 2, but you get what I'm saying. So that what it does is one, you get some recognition as any of these where you have these stacked categories like RPG or best independent game or best debut indie, just a couple of the ones that were really stacked this year, where you can get some recognition for that. And the big thing that happens there is even if it doesn't change the way people think about it in the moment, you know that writers are going to write about it, right? When they talk about game of the year,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to write Expedition 33 won game of the year and X got second and Y got third. And also you'll get on these like article or news collection sites like Wikipedia or whatever the case may be. It's just like when you have in baseball, like the person who gets second in Cy Young or third in Cy Young, like that gets added to their awards tab to say like, you may not have been the best, but this is something worth celebrating. It's, only one team can win the championship every year. Only one game can
Right.
win game of the year every year. But you don't have to worry about being like doing like I was saying tit for tat awarding, and you can get recognition to all of the great games because this was an incredible year for games and RPGs and independent games and even beyond that. So it feels like that's a way to give some level of uh, praise to these teams, even in a year when one game wins everything.
Yeah, and I think it's when you think of it, when you hear Jeff describe the Game Awards, it's a night of celebration about gaming, and I think there's because you've proposed this a couple of times to me, and I like it a lot. I think it really makes you think about what you're voting for in what order and how you really feel about these games. And I think it would offer more time to like critically think about your choices. Not that outlets that vote on this stuff don't, but maybe it makes them think a little bit longer instead of just oh, Expedition 33 is here. I'll just mark that off. Not that it doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying maybe there's a little bit of that going on. I'm not entirely sure, but I think doing it in a way where it's like, well, Expedition 33 wins best independent game, but also there's room for Hollow Knight and Hades too to also get some recognition and love. But those games are also just as, you know, valid and of receiving some sort of recognition. You know,
Mhm.
I think
I'm
it.
gonna go off script here slightly from
Whoa.
our storyline, our rundown. But what with Expedition 33, kind of winning this independent game award and everyone being always having every year, the question is what actually is an indie game in,
Mm.
2025 or 2024, whatever the case may be. Do you think that they should split up uh indie game into like categories, whether it's by dollar value or by however you would do it, but like small small indie game, medium indie game, large indie game?
We ran
I don't know
into.
if they could give you more awards, but
I don't know if that's necessarily the issue. I think we need to come out, and I know it's never going to happen. But I have a similar issue with like best action RPG versus best action adventure. Like, what's the difference there? You know what I mean? Um, but I think with indies it gets tricky. We had a similar situation not too long ago. And I think this one's a little more egregious than Expedition 33. I think it's pretty easy to look at Expedition 33 and say that's an indie game because it's a small ass team, very small budget. Sure, they got they had advertising rights with Xbox, blah blah blah. You could point to all this stuff, um, but I think the fact of the matter is like it's a smaller team with a smaller budget, and it's this person that learned how to make video games off of YouTube and used to work at Ubisoft. Um, so and then you go back just a couple of years, look at Dave the Diver. There's a lot of contention about that one
yeah.
because you look at that and it feels like an indie game. And then you look at who makes it. I'm pretty sure it's like Nexon that made it. Some big team over in Korea that made it. I'm gonna fact check myself live on air before I completely misrepresent what that game is. But um, it was made by a pretty large team that it was, you know, okay, developer Mint Rocket. That's right. Um, but they're a subsidiary of Nexon, which is pretty big game publishing developing studio. So like you could make a very strong case for that shouldn't have won best indie game when it did. Uh,
Well, I think that's where you get into like how do you compare Sing and Fall, which is a team of, 33
mm-hmm.
versus a team of two that make a video game, right? And they're both
Right.
considered indie games. Like I personally am not going to contend that Sandfall isn't an indie game just because of the publisher and stuff. Some people would, but if we take it for the case of this argument, like trying to compare a team of 30 with a $10 million budget and a team of two with a $50,000 budget in the same category is hard, right? Like
It is,
that.
yeah.
I mean,
But I also wonder too because we're getting to a point where with each new generation, like graphics mean kind of less and less, and it's kind of up to the developers to come up with some new idea or gimmick to make your game seem more palatable. And I think that's one of the best parts about indie games is it can look as good as Expedition 33 does, or it can have a more um, beautiful art style or design like Hollow Knight and not be as graphically intense. And those can both still win best indie game. And I think the real problem is we need to define what an indie game is and what that means more than
yeah, it's
anything.
certainly muddied in the modern day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything is so interconnected in weird ways that it wasn't back in the day when they came up with the indie and before AA games went away and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's like now everything's kind of got muddled.
Yeah. You don't see a lot of that AA game feel. It's either indie or AAA, and it's just, I mean, that's just not true, but it's kind of what it feels like. So I don't know.
Yeah. All right, moving on from the awards portion of the show to probably the more interesting portion to most people. We're gonna go down between the two of us our top three favorite reveals slash announcements from the show. It could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new game, um, but we'll go kind of back and forth here. I'll send it to you first, Pat. What is one of the games that you wanted to highlight that they talked about?
Man, it was kind of tough because there was a lot of really cool stuff between the sequel to Control or a new Mega Man game after how long, forever it feels like.
Hmm.
But I ended up going with trying to keep mostly newer titles, or at least titles from that aren't from like a series that I'm at least interested in. But my first pick was one that showed up early on and caught all of our attention. It's called Bradley the Badger.
Hmm.
It's a 3D platformer, at least from what I could tell, where you're a badger and you're making your way through different types of games. We had, Bloodborne, slash Soulsborne mock up. We had a Last of Us mock up. And when we actually saw gameplay of it past the trailer, it looked like it was using some really cool ideas as for how to like. It looked like, and I have to go back and rewatch the trailer, but it looked like it gave him some sort of like game designer tool where he could,
Hmm.
play with the world in fun ways to make platforming easier. And it felt like it almost like open. I need to see more before I really say that like you can play it your way because I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is. But it's from you're gonna have to correct me on this. The guy that made some sort of game.
Mario plus Rabbids. That's it.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yep.
And you can definitely kind of see some of that in some of the design
Oh,
choices.
for sure.
But some other overlap with that in Mario plus Rabbids is Grant Kirkhope, who, if you don't know, did a lot of music, very famously for Banjo Kazooie, which is one of my favorite like soundtracks from that era. He's doing the music for this, so I'm definitely very interested in what this is going to turn out to be.
Mm. This one for me looked incredible. I'm not even the biggest platforming guy, so that for me to get me that to be super interested in it, you really have to have something there.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me a lot of the way Split Fiction works.
Mm.
For those of you guys who don't know, like a part of the structure of Split Fiction is like you go in and out of these different stories in their mind, and what that plays out is like very different aesthetics and gameplay mechanics in each little section that you went in, and they kind of had a similar thing going on in this one, which seems very interesting from a gameplay perspective because that's another one that could have won. Well, I guess I don't know if you apply that to indie. I think you probably do, but
Mm-hmm.
another one that's a really incredible game where it does of all of the games that I played this year, it's from a mechanical perspective by far the best game. I mean, it was incredible the amount of different kinds of games sections that it allowed you to play, and this kind of
Yeah,
has a lot of that kind of same thing going on there.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye on that. What was one that you were looking forward to? Where do you want to
I have to
start?
go with the obvious number one for me, uh, being Divinity, which if you watched our last episode, we saw that the Hellstone, as they call it, the statue that was out in the desert, turned out to be for this new Divinity game from Larian, which we're gonna have a separate segment where we talk about some of the stuff that Sven Vink said after the fact, but I'll kind of just focus on the trailer here in this one. And I want to just say off the top, an absolute bold move by Larian and Sven coming off of Baldur's Gate 3, like considered revolutionary, best RPG in recent times, so many great things. And they come out with just this over the top, gory, uh, borderline, like sexual tones. I'm not going to say pornographic, but sexual stuff going on, like sacrificing a guy at the altar. They absolutely took a swing and said, we're just going to go for it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
incredible to see from a studio. It's also in a game series, which Larian has, I want to say, is it five or six games?
I was just
I
looking
think
at
it's six.
this. I think it
It's,
is six.
it's Divine Divinity, Beyond Divinity, Dragon Commander, Original Sin 1, Original Sin 2, and Divinity 2, I believe. So six,
Yes.
that is.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Um, and this was just a cinematic trailer showing this kind of like festival that they were having where they sacrificed this guy and it caused,
Bad
they're not
things.
called demons in the Divinity world, but uh, demon-esque stuff to come out.
Hmm.
Uh, this brought up a lot of speculation about what the game's going to be about because they didn't show any gameplay or anything like that. But we'll come back to that later, like I said. But this looked incredible. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, Larian's really shown their stuff the last, I'd say, last three titles. I mean, you look at both Divinity Original Sin games, like, people will very openly acclaim Original Sin 2 as one of the best game RPGs, and then Baldur's Gate comes out, and so like for them to really nail the formula in Baldur's Gate 3 after already more or less nailing it in Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, and then being able to return back to their universe and use everything they learned from Baldur's Gate 3 and without the shackles, that's a direct quote of World of War, or not World of Warcraft,
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons. um, I think is extremely exciting, and just based on what they described it at the Game Awards and what they've been talking about today and yesterday recently. Very excited. This had a really good showing at the show.
Hmm. And it's only one of the two games they've got. We don't know what the other one's going to be yet,
Mm,
but
true.
everyone was speculating Divinity and something new. So
Hmm.
we'll wait to see what their next one is. Their other game, I should say. What do you got up second on your list?
I had to. This one was kind of a dark horse for me. I wasn't exactly expecting to put it on this list, but I did. I put it's Gang of Dragon. If this game, if you saw the trailer for this, and you're like, that looks like Yakuza, that's because it almost is.
It did. It
Um,
looked like it.
so it a couple. I forget exactly when this happened, but the creator of the Yakuza series, Toshihiro Nagoshi, left Ryuga Gotoku to form his own studio. This is their first game. So again, if this felt like Yakuza, I guarantee that's intentional.
100%.
I'm looking at some of these screenshots on a Steam page, and it's like, I mean, this just looks. There's only like 5 screenshots right now, but um, if you're telling me that the guy that made some of the best 3D brawlers of all time, uh, and he's got a new project that's completely his own. He's not being held back by like Sega or whatever holding him back. I have a feeling this could be a really great set. This is either going to be really good, or it's going to be like a
Hmm.
7 out of 10. We're going to forget about it in like 3 years. Either way, I'm excited for it.
Like this is like giving Watchdog vibes in that sense. It's like the trailer comes out, it looks
Mm.
incredibly credible graphically, like they're gonna do this big thing, and then you're like, actually, it's kind of okay. Oh, I guess Watch Dogs 1 was kind of bad when it came out, but
I would even say I would compare it to like Watch Dogs Legion, where the concept sounds really
Mhm.
cool, and then no one talks about it, like 2 months later.
But I actually I was I mean, we were talking about graphical fidelity earlier and it
Hmm.
not mattering, but in this trailer, which was like a mix of mostly cinematic and a little bit of gameplay, if I remember correctly,
Mm.
but from a fidelity perspective, looked incredible. Like I was really impressed by that part of it. The gameplay itself, I don't know if that one really will do it for me if it's something that I'm gonna play, but
Hmm.
it looked really interesting.
Yeah. No, and if it's got any sort of goofiness, it looked like the trailer was a bit exaggerated in what this guy can do. So I mean,
Sure.
it looks like it's gonna contain a lot of the DNA that Yakuza has going for it. So I'm keeping an eye on it. We'll see how it goes. Well, let's throw it back to you, Austin. What's another one from your list?
This has got to be maybe, I mean, Divinity was really big. That was one of the big ones. This is maybe the top three for sure. Is now I'm gonna hold on, sorry. I messed something up here. Is the new Star Wars game, Fate of the Old Republic.
Mm.
Which it's gonna be a single player game. with Casey Hudson, who famous for I didn't know he worked on KOTOR, but we found that out when they announced
Hmm.
this, and he was also the head for the Mass Effect series, and technically he was also the head of Anthem for a while, but we pretend like he pretends like that didn't happen. Uh, and they didn't give us any gameplay. This later was Jason Schreier said they had just founded the studio recently, and so this is kind of just spinning itself up. But I mean, as you know, the two of us have been playing games for a long time now. It's pretty hard to have played as long as we have and not be excited for another game along the lines of KOTOR. And that's, now we're going to get two of them, right? We've got the KOTOR 1 remake coming. Uh,
Hmm.
Unfortunately, or maybe still happening, the KOTOR 2 remake. That's weird. There was an announcement or a leak, I
A
guess, if you want to
leak,
call it
yeah.
that. I think it was in whatever. Maybe not happening. And now we have, we'll call it like a spiritual successor, I guess. We don't really know a lot of details about it other than the fact that it's coming, but
Yeah.
it is very exciting. Star Wars had a really big showing at this event.
Yeah, they had that racer that got all of us to pop a little bit. I think that looked really cool, especially coming from what was it like Need for Speed and former devs. I forget exactly, but we're here to talk
Burnout.
about Fate of the Old Republic. Like, you kind of nailed it on the head. Like, yeah, I had to look up Casey Hudson. Like after they said, they put his name on there. It's like, well, you don't just put a name on a game share for no reason. Um, and so I had to look it up, and like the last thing he worked on was Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Like that doesn't count. What about before that? And it was Anthem. Like well, okay, that's not great. But I mean, he was director on like Knights of the Old Republic 1 and the entire Mass Effect trilogy. Like that's an incredible, um, gosh, portfolio of games that he's worked on. And that's not to mention that he helped with Baldur's Gate 2, Neverwinter Nights, Jade Empire, like other um, role playing games that you know most gamers plugged into this specific scene, the single player RPGs, are aware of.
Mhm.
So it's something that it definitely perked my attention. Them saying it's coming, or Casey Hudson saying it's coming for 2030, I'm not sure I believe, but I'm excited for it nonetheless. I think there's a lot of really cool potential here if they can nail it.
Right. Yeah. For those who don't know, Jason Schreier put out a tweet after there was so much hype about it, saying they just started the studio and he didn't expect the game till like 2030 or something like that. And he said it mostly sarcastically. Like, I don't think he was being serious and like the idea that it is literally 5 years away. Um, and Casey Hudson himself, I believe, came out after the fact and said, "I promise it's going to be out before 2030" or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly think the sentiment is still probably true. Like, I think you're on the same boat as me. It's probably 28 or 29, which you're right,
Yeah.
Casey. It's not 2030, but it is quite a long ways away. And this is a an announcement that's really far out, which, big IPs like this do it all the time. I mean, we're going to talk about Bethesda and Todd Howard later,
I
and they
mean,
did it with Elder Scrolls 6, and we have no idea when that's coming.
well,
So,
you don't even need to look past Star Wars. I mean, we don't know where the Star Wars, the oh my god, the New Republic game made, or High Republic game being made by the people that did Detroit Become Human. I'm forgetting the studio right now at this point in time, but they showed that like 2 or 3 years ago now. At this point, actually, probably even earlier than that. We still haven't seen anything from that, and also the Knights of the Old Republic remake. That was also
yeah.
announced a few years ago. Like we haven't heard a
And
thing about. Well,
Casey's old series, Mass Effect. We haven't heard about that one in forever, too, and that's
mm-hmm.
been 3 years at least, maybe four, three
Yeah.
for sure. So,
So
this is a cool
yeah.
one, but don't expect it anytime soon.
No. Yep. 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 Yep.
And that sends it back to you. What do you got? Number three on your list.
I had to pick Order of the Sinking Star. This was the mind fuckery puzzle game that they showed. I forget exactly when in the show, but it's from Jonathan Blow, who was the mind behind Braid and The Witness. And if you've never played, I can only speak to The Witness. I've never played Braid, but The Witness is a very impressive puzzle game, and this looks like it's bringing that sort of mindfuckery. but also with a touch of split fiction, some sort of co-op element. I think I'm not. It looks like it at least. But it's a top-down puzzle game. You're moving these different sorts of blocks around to create paths and platforms and connecting these seemingly different worlds and bring them all together. And they keep they just put out not put out. Hold on, I'm not gonna be able to find it now. But someone's saying that this game's gonna take you like 200 something hours to beat, and it's like, well, dang, that
They
many
said it was like
puzzles.
1,600 puzzles or something like that, right? Like some absurd number of puzzles.
I'm seeing on the Steam page over 1,000 interconnected and crafted puzzles. Um,
Mm.
so this game just looks like seemingly simple, and then having layers that you just keep on discovering, and as you play for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So this one definitely caught my eye, big time.
And that was the most interesting part is like at first they were showing like individual puzzles that you were doing,
Hmm.
and then at one point it like zooms back and it's showing how like all of these puzzles seemingly are part of one much larger puzzle. Uh, and that kind of puzzleception, puzzle interaction
Yeah,
is like a wholly new concept as far as I can think. And I'm interested to see where, if anywhere, that goes because I can see that it being incredibly fun, but also uh, a serious gameplay problem where, like, if you can't figure out this piece of the puzzle, or you have to pull a piece of the puzzle from four puzzles over to solve this puzzle, like
hmm,
that could get hard and troublesome for people real quick.
yeah. Well, I speaking on that, I mean, it kind of gave me like Cocoon vibes, big
Mhm.
time, and I think that game ran the risk of doing what you're talking about, where it's like, oh, I need this, well, I'll grab it, jump out of this orb to then jump out of another orb, and then jump into this orb while I'm carrying this thing. It never ever felt tedious. The way I described it made it probably sound more tedious than it is.
Sure.
So I'm hopeful that this game being like 100 times bigger than that game was, is able to pull that off too. No way to know for sure until we actually play it, but I don't know. I'm excited for it nonetheless.
Indeed.
But what's you got one more game over there? What are you hiding? Show me.
Oh, this one, it's third on my list, but for specifically next year, because it's only, I guess it's the only one of the three I picked that's going to be out next year.
Mm,
But this one might be my most excited game for 26 as of right now. And that is for the new Lego Batman game, which we've known about and they've already released trailers for, but they released a new trailer with a uh, release date for it in early next year. Let me see, I have to find it here.
yeah.
It is May 29th, so
Okay.
5 months into 26. I am so excited for this game. I Batman Arkham City is my favorite game of all time, and unfortunately, Rocksteady has decided not to make Arkham games for some reason. And this game is a spiritual successor doesn't really work in this sense because it's Batman. Um, but who would have thought we were getting the next Arkham game from TT Games and it's going to be Lego?
Mm-hmm.
I'm super hyped. I can't believe that this is how we're getting the next game, but I will take it and I will love it all the same.
Yeah.
And the part that, just to, I guess, to explain the game a little bit,
Mm.
it's called Legacy of the Dark Knight. And so it's got all of the different movie Batmans, and kind of like the story beats from their movies and stuff like that. So you get to play as all the different ones and experience the different stuff, and then kind of the mechanics of the Arkham games.
Yeah. No, as a pretty big Batman fan, this has been up there as far as anticipated games go. Um, I know I'm sure we've talked about it on content on this channel before, but um, seeing it here, having finally getting a release date for it, very exciting. It's easily one of my most anticipated games. I think it's really neat how it's drawing elements from not just the Dark Knight movies, but the Michael Keaton movies, and even drawing story elements from some of the games and stuff, while giving you faux Arkham gameplay. Like it looks great. It looks phenomenal. So I'm
Mhm.
very excited for this.
Obviously, a lot more than just those six, but we don't have time to go through every single announcement. But we do want to talk about one last one, and that is the finale of the Game Awards, which caused a lot of discourse on the internet. We talked about it when it showed up. I think we were softer on it than a lot of people, but we'll kind of revisit it here. It was a game called High Guard, which is a free-to-play FPS that's trying to cross like first-person shooter with uh kind of like larger world, like Helldivers 2-esque, kind of like trying to take over the planet type thing with some, I don't know what the right term is, not necessarily MOBA, but kind of MOBA elements. It's trying to be the end all be all of FPS games, and it's coming from guys who came off of Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends. And it caused a lot of discourse of people going like, why did they pick this as the finale for the game? Why can't these FPS developers come up with something new or interesting or better? A lot of people likening it to Concord, which was obviously a massive failure for Sony. I don't know. What did you think of that trailer and now that you've sat on it a little bit since it came on?
Uh, you know, I think the game itself looks fine. I think the biggest problem is where it sits in the level of Game Award reveals. I think Jeff saving it for last, clearly testament to his appreciation for Titanfall and Apex Legends and what those devs are doing there. I think that's something that I see and I accept and I respect, but I still think it's kind of wild that we have something like a new game, a spiritual successor to one of the best RPGs of all time, uh, that no one knew was coming. To be clear, and we had Divinity being revealed. We even had a new Mega Man game. Like maybe those would have been a little bit more fitting of a last spot. Because again, I think my overall feel on what this game looks like is it could be good. It could be great, knowing the pedigree of who's making it. But just looking at it, it's like, well, I get why people are reacting the way they are. It feels like another Concord. It feels like another Paladins. It feels like another generic hero shooter MOBA. You know, and I can't
Yeah,
fault people for being mad about that.
yeah. I mean, I just sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, Fate of the Old Republic seems like the exact right thing that should have probably finished off the whole show because we got almost nothing about it and it's super far out. So it feels
Mm-hmm.
like the kind of thing that you hit as a send off. It's like
Yeah.
everyone's going to talk about it, but there's not really much to say. And so you put it at the end and go, look, this big, huge reveal. It's super awesome, but it's not going
Yeah.
to be here for a long time. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and maybe I'm not remembering it well enough, but I don't feel like he really hyped it up as like this is big announcement at the end in the way
Mm.
that some it feels like some people like what was it? I don't remember what the last one was 2 years ago, but I feel like I remember him kind of bigging it up more as like this thing at the end more than it was this time. Um, but again, I kind of fall in the same spot as you. Am I going to play this game? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe. Like, is there a chance it comes out when something else isn't out and I try it and I'm like, yeah, this is another FPS and then I never touch it again? That's probably the outcome of this. Um, I didn't, I, like, riding on a horse gameplay didn't, like, enthrall me. I wasn't like, wow, that's the new big thing that I really needed was to shoot a gun while on a horse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think part of the problem was the game didn't really explain itself very well in the trailer.
Mm-mm.
Like we didn't really understand what it was at the time, and then I looked it up and we talked about it, what they had actually said it is, but it didn't really explain itself great either. I feel like the Concord one was a rug pull in a different way, and this is a slight tangent, but everyone talks about Concord as if it was a fail from the first second the trailer showed, and that's not what it was. Like for 80% of that trailer, everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is like could be a really cool Guardians of the Galaxy style single player like RPG with companions type game." And then when it got to the part where we learned that it was like a free to play multiplayer game, everyone went, "Wait, what?" Because it felt like this weird rug pull in a way that this game was not, in the sense that it basically just held on its sleeve. It was a FPS like from the very beginning. It's just not something that people want, right? It's coming into a market that does not want any more free to play FPS games that don't have something new to bring to the table. And in this case, I don't think mashing together elements of things that already exist works in a saturated FPS market. So I think it was not the best final trailer, but I don't think it was as bad as the internet kind of feels about it.
No,
I mean,
I
it's probably not going to make a bunch of money, but you
no,
know.
nope. And I can't help but look at, when people, because I saw people ragging on the reveal of Okami 2. What was that, last year, the year before? Because like Jeff really hyped that up. He's like, all this for Okami 2, and then Capcom, the official Capcom account, replied, "It's like, oh, would this make you feel better?" And it had a picture of Amaterasu, the main character from Capcom, with like a basketball and a gun. Um,
Mhm.
and he's like, is this more to your liking?" And it's like, you don't understand just how important Okami 1 was and the pedigree of people that worked on that game. How they're coming back to work together on a new one is such a big deal. This doesn't have that going for it. It's like, yeah, you've got the people that worked on Titanfall 1 and Apex Legends. Like, that's important to know, but when it's just another shooter, it's like, well, what else would you expect from them? Like, yeah, I don't know. Very weird to have that last. I definitely a lot of other better options. I want to bring up this tweet from Paul Tassi real quick. Though he writes for Forbes, but he mentions Highguard currently sitting at the golden 1 to 10 Concord dislike ratio on YouTube. Uh, Hard to understand how tired people are of new live hero shooters, and I think that really sums up my thoughts on it precisely. I think it's just a bad economy for this kind of game to come out, and for it to be the big announcement, quote unquote, at the end of the Game Awards is wild. Uh,
Sure.
so,
Anyway, we'll move on from that one because ultimately, like we said, probably gonna fail.
right.
Moving on to something that people actually cared about. We're gonna come back to Divinity here, and we'll talk about all the stuff that's come out
Mm-hmm.
since the Game Awards. So the big thing that everyone was wondering after the Divinity trailer came out was, is this going to be an action RPG or is this going to be a turn-based RPG? Because the Divinity series as a whole has kind of a weird grouping of different games with different styles. The first two Divinities were ARPGs in Divine Divinity and Beyond Divinity. And then Original Sin 1 and 2 were turn based RPGs. And then Dragon Commander is actually an RTS, though it kind of fits into this weird
Mm-hmm.
section of the Divinity world where they're like trying something different. And then I don't remember if Divinity 2, I don't remember. I assume that one's an ARPG, but I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Anyway,
Yeah.
so people were wondering what kind of an RPG is this going to be? They said it's going to be the biggest one they've ever made. They're going to push all the boundaries and all of that. But what kind of RPG is it? And in his interviews after the fact, Sven told us that it is in fact going to be another turn-based RPG, which to me was a little interesting because I figured, okay, you're going with the naming nomenclature of the ARPG games. They didn't call it Original Sin 3 or something like that. So I thought, oh, maybe this is going to go back to the action RPG roots, kind of like Owlcat Games with now doing Osiris Reborn as an action RPG. But no, they decided to go turn-based with it. How do you feel about that part specifically?
That part specifically, when this news first dropped, I was like, well, what did people expect from Larian after having made three of the best turn-based RPGs of the last like 15 years? And then looking into the history of the Divinity series, it's like, oh, well, it wasn't always that. So I can kind of understand why people might have been asking this question. That being said, I still think it was always kind of a shoe in that this was going to be turn based, just based on the original Sin games and Baldur's Gate being massive hits, and a lot of that is because of the turn-based system. So
Mhm. It's interesting. I think, and part of what Sven says in his interviews has been you don't need to know anything or have played the other games to be able to play this game.
hmm
And so I think that's where the Divinity with no two or three or original sin or anything like that kind
mm,
of comes into play, where they're
okay, yeah,
considering it kind of like a reset almost. Um, we don't really know what the story is going to look like because as is Sven is kind of notorious for having said back in the day he didn't really care about continuity or storylines across games or anything like that. So
hmm
there was a lot of kind of stuff that happened and then would be just immediately uh, overwritten by the next game, like in the
yeah,
original Divinity games. So it seems like they're kind of coalesce all of that together into this one and come with kind of a more continuous story here, and we'll get something going forward. So that'll be interesting to see. Some of the other stuff that he talked about in the interviews is it's going to be single player. There will be cooperative multiplayer like Baldur's Gate 3. They've been working on this game for 2 years. Mostly, it seems like in pre-production, but they're now like into full-on production of this game. And they're not sure if they're going to do early access like they did with Baldur's Gate. And I don't know if you can consider Original Sin 1 and 2 like they did Kickstarters, so there's like a version of early access, I guess.
yeah.
But they're not, they said most likely, but they're not sure if they're going to do early access for this one. I kind of think personally, you should take your swing and just not do early access. I don't know. Do you have a strong opinion one way or the other on that?
Not necessarily. I know with Baldur's Gate 3 is a bit of a different situation because I think they were trying to get that out on Stadia before that ultimately failed. But I think for a game like this, where the story, for this and Baldur's Gate, I don't know. I think there's merit to it. If the story is one of your big selling points that you want people to experience going through it for the first time, then maybe you don't. But if you're priding yourself on the fact that this is going to be a bigger game than Baldur's Gate 3 and it's going to have more different opportunities to play your character in a way that you see fit, I could see that working for them.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It really depends. I mean, Larian just in general is really good at listening to community feedback. So it's almost like we're not getting any more patches for Baldur's Gate 3, of course, but like when that game came out, it was like, okay, we hear your feedback. Here's this. Oh, here's that. Like to the point that we got a patch like earlier this year that had like a bunch of new subclasses. So I feel like it doesn't make too much of a difference to me, but like they could easily get away with another early access. But even when the game launches, it still kind of feels like it's never done until like, okay, we're putting our foot down. That was the last patch. So
Right. That was all the, we'll call it good news out of what Sven said. There is some a controversial point that he was making in these interviews too, and I'll quote him here specifically. But this is on using generative AI and developing Divinity, and he said they're using it to. And this is where the quote starts: explore ideas, flesh out PowerPoint presentations, develop concept art, and write placeholder text. Uh, I think the one that people really had a problem with is the develop concept art part,
mm-hmm.
especially because he kind of specifically said that all of the final text is going to be written by writers and all of the game is going to be coded by coders. So it was kind of drawing a distinction between all of the other creative fields um, and the concept art and the artists. He had to come out today and he put out a tweet to kind of tamp down on everyone going crazy on the internet about this because AI and generative AI in general is kind of the hot button issue of the time. Basically, to say that they have a bunch of concept artists on staff. All of the final concept art is going to be done by concept artists, but they're using it as like kind of early on for getting an idea of the blocking, getting an idea of that kind of stuff, and using it to kind of develop ideas with real artists doing the final work there. That's kind of a lot, but What were your thoughts on either the first part or his response or all of it in general?
It just feels like such a rake you could avoid stepping on.
For sure.
Um, that's where my head goes first. Like, if you're gonna do it, like, why would you openly admit it like that? Like, there's such an easy prediction to how people will react to that. And then to see him post again on Twitter, um, and see a lot of people like just responding and like still being like, well, that's not. It doesn't matter if the actual AI generated art is in the final product. It's the fact that you're using it and still using a substantial amount of energy and polluting all these different spaces, and it's all, every criticism of this is valid, and I respect what Larian's doing and making sure it doesn't end up in the final product, but they're still doing it, and that still rubs me the wrong way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I think the two arguments that I saw the most when I looked through the replies a little bit was one, there is no ethical generative AI because AI, all it does is take what already exists from other people and uses it to mash together this not necessarily new thing. It just takes all of that and uses it to train itself to do a version of that, which I think is a very real criticism that eventually needs to be figured out by the courts. But that's kind of an entirely different topic. And then the other part of it is the part that I was saying before about why are you treating the artists differently than like the writers or whatever the case may be. I kind of think they're in a weird spot where some people are going to take a hard line, like some studios will take a hard line stance and say, we are not doing creative AI, if you want to call it that, like artistic AI that has to do with whether it's writing, whether it's concept art, whether it's coding. Though the coding one, I suppose, I mean, the problem with that is there's a lot of AI coding in terms of like using AI in code, not using AI to code in games already. So I kind of feel like you're in a spot where this is the landscape we're in, and 80% of these companies, if not more, are going to try this out. Because as we know, all of these big studios complain constantly about how games cost too much to make. And so this is a way for them to try and bring that cost down, whether right or wrong. I don't personally know the answer. I think it probably lies on currently on the side of mostly detrimental and very little uh, benefit. But I also don't know. We're not at the end state of what AI looks like here. I'm not the no AI.
mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm not going to be involved. Like I played Arc Raiders that notoriously used
Mm-hmm.
AI to put in some voice lines from actors that was approved by the actors. Um, so it's not a hard line stance for me. I would be more concerned if he was outwardly saying, "Yeah, we're going to use it to, uh, you know, create characters or write lines or something like that." This feels pretty harmless to me, but I do understand the point of view of no means no. Like we can't let him cross the line because all that means is you can just slowly step more and more and more. I think both are reasonable, but I'm still very excited for this game. I will be excited for this game no matter what until I see gameplay. And even then, like I am a loving turn-based RPG fan, so they would have to do something really horrendous for me to not be excited about this. This doesn't really change my opinion that much.
Yep. And it looks like I'm trying to, I was trying to like find more of, because like when I think of news reporters, I think Jason Schreier is one of the bigger names for him to like put this out and then have Swen Vink feel like he has to correct it. I was trying to see there is more clarification on Schreier's Blue Sky account. If you want to take a look at that, he has the full transcript there. If you want to see what was fully said in the interview, but um, yeah, I mean, what pretty much what Austin was saying, especially about the games that I already play that has elements of generative AI in it. Like, the finals and the same developers that made Arc Raiders, like both those use AI generated voice lines, which I don't love. Maybe we should fix that, but and then even also finding out that Expedition 33 has bits of generative AI in there, and I have to look at that. I only saw that a glimpse, so I don't fully know what is in that game from AI, but it is kind of just a product of where we are in this current stage of where game development is. I do think there is a way for us to use generative AI in a way that doesn't take away anything from the artistic vision of the people behind the product, and also to use it in a way that doesn't fuck up our environment and completely pollute everything around us. So I don't think we're there yet necessarily, but it's definitely something that will change and grow as we go forward, but we're not there yet. So,
Moving on from Divinity to another massive series, although this one we have no idea when it's coming. Or I guess two, technically, two massive series from a developer who also loves to just spend ungodly amounts of money on video games, and that's Bethesda and Todd Howard. So, for those of you who don't know, Fallout Season 2, the Season 2 of the TV show is out now, actually, as of recording this, the 16th. They moved it up one day, and as part of that, Todd is out doing press tour, and he's put
my
out some
favorite.
interesting quotes about both the future of Fallout and the future of Elder Scrolls and where they're at in the production, and they're kind of contradicting each other. So I'll just read both quotes, and then we can kind of talk about them a little bit. First quote, talking about Elder Scrolls 6 is it's progressing really well. The majority of the studios on 6, but I'll say this, we always overlap. So we're very used to overlapping development, and we have long pre-productions on things so that we feel good about them. And it's a process. We all wish it went a little bit faster or a lot faster, but it's a process that we want to get right. Saying there, obviously, we've been doing this for a long time with Elder Scrolls 6, and it's still going. And then this next quote is about uh, Fallout, and he says, "We've had a long-term plan for Fallout, and so I wish I could talk about all those today. I'll just say this: it's the franchise that we're doing the most in right now." And that's the part where things get a little confusing. How is it that, in quote one, the majority of the studios on 6, um, but in quote two, he says they're doing the most in Fallout? Those feel a little contradictory, do they not?
Uh, okay, so I guess I interpreted this second quote a little bit differently because I think a lot of Bethesda's actual like developers and coders are on Elder Scrolls 6. I think that part is true. Because they've always done that where it's like, all right, we're doing this while we're working on Starfall. That's not it.
Starfield.
Starfield. As they were wrapping up production on that, they already started pre-pro on Elder Scrolls 6, and so I can totally believe that they're already starting pre-production on the next Fallout game, even if Elder Scrolls 6 isn't out before we enter assisted living. Um, but we have this second quote to me reads like we're doing the most in it right now, not necessarily with regards to Fallout 5 or New Vegas 2 or whatever. I think it's more so in reference to, the new season of the TV show's out. We just put out an update in Fallout 76 where you can become a ghoul. I think it's more so in reference to that, which is, Skyrim, or sorry, Skyrim, not Skyrim, the broader world of Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls, they only have a new game coming out in a couple of years, in a few years, whenever it comes out. Whereas Fallout has its own ongoing multiplayer game, a TV show, and eventually a sequel to Fallout 4 or New Vegas. So, to me,
I
they don't necessarily contradict.
Yeah, I actually agree that I think that's the right way, if there is such a thing, to interpret what he says. If you read the rest of the interview and the way he talks about the Fallout piece specifically, which all of
Mm-hmm.
the articles that we reference we put in the description if you want to read them. He is talking about Fallout 76. He's talking about the update to Fallout 4, or yeah, Fallout 4. As is it? right? Not the next gen update, but the one after that that's supposed to fix all of the stuff they broke with the next gen update.
Oh, yeah, I see.
And
Yep.
Fallout Season 2 and putting created creator mods in Fallout 4 like a
Hmm.
decade after it came out. Uh
Right.
anyway, I agree that that's what he's saying. I think that brings up a question of it, with the fact that we don't expect Elder Scrolls for at least 3 more years, maybe longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that puts Fallout 4, no, Fallout 5,
Five.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Fallout 5, like, I don't know, 10 years from now,
Yeah.
12 years from now.
I don't think that's
Like,
crazy.
are they really spending their time wisely? I don't know. It feels like Bethesda is the worst version of the way that games are made now, being like they take 1,000 light years to be created, and you know, some people would say that their new stuff is not as good as their old stuff, even. Uh, so I don't know. They're just in a weird spot, and it doesn't feel like putting out an update 10 years later in Fallout 4 is the answer to what you should be doing.
God, it's so weird. Bethesda's such a weird company, but because like you'll see Starfield, a game like Starfield come out that's super hyped, and it's like, hey, we have all these planets you can explore, and then it still has some of that classic vintage Bethesda jank that we were all experiencing when we played Skyrim like 10 years ago. Um, so they haven't really. I don't feel like they've modernized a lot of their processes, and as a result, things are just taking longer. So I really could not tell what's going on over there, because like, God, I can't help but think of Todd Howard saying, or just recently, like he regrets revealing Elder Scrolls 6 when they did, and that
As he
he
should.
prefers the shadow drop that they did with like Oblivion, the remaster of Oblivion earlier this year. Um, and it just I can't help but think of when they revealed Fallout 4 and it was out like maybe 2 or 3 months later. Like, what's going on there? Why can't we do that again? Bring that back.
I also think there is an interesting, like, this is kind of ticky tack a little bit, but like, if we really want to say he's like counting the number of things that they're doing in Fallout versus Elder Scrolls, I actually think it might be closer than he thinks it is, in the sense that, like, okay, you've got the TV show, you've got the update for Fallout 4, you got 76, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're doing anything for Fallout 5 right now, right?
Mm.
So that's what, three things that they're doing. In Elder Scrolls, they've got Elder Scrolls 6 and they've got Elder Scrolls Online.
Mm.
So it's not like it's that different. Like, you don't have just the one Elder Scrolls
Mm.
project, and you just dropped Oblivion not that long ago. So
True.
you're probably not doing anything on that, and you didn't. That was not internal to Bethesda, but like that was another thing in the Elder Scrolls world. So I don't know that it's actually that different in terms of the number of things they're doing.
Yeah, it makes me wonder
I
if
guess they have all
Todd's.
covered, but I don't know if
Yeah, I mean
they're
Todd.
still putting stuff for that.
Todd says stuff. He's been saying stuff and he's gonna keep saying stuff. And if you want to believe the Fallout 3 remaster rumors, maybe he's considering that too. I don't know. It,
Maybe that's Tim Kane's new project, Fallout New Vegas remaster.
hey, that'd be sick. I don't know if it's gonna be that though, because I would have guessed that, and he said we were never gonna be able to guess that. So, jokes on
Yeah,
you.
I don't.
Yeah. So.
All right, that takes up our major stories. We're gonna hit some quick hits, and then we'll be out of here because we're getting short on time. A follow up to last week's episode on Netflix buying Warner Brothers. First of all, apparently they Paramount put in a hostile bid, which news broke today, I believe, that Warner Brothers is not going to take that bid, even though it's
Oh,
for more money. They're going
actually,
to
didn't
stick with
see
the
this.
Netflix bid. Um, but also the what was it? Was it the CFO? Or maybe it was the co-COO, one of the two, uh, was doing an interview and talking about Warner Brothers, the acquisition of Warner Brothers, and basically said that they attributed no value to Warner Brother games, basically saying in the grand scheme of the transaction, it presented nothing for them, which to me reads as exactly what we were talking about last week or 2 weeks ago, that they're going to sell this off or mostly get rid of it and not care about it because it's not
Hmm.
really relevant to what they want to do.
Yep. I think that just speaks to Warner Brother Games' recent turnout. Aside from Hogwarts Legacy, Netflix is absolutely considering this more for the brand that comes with Warner Brothers and the history that comes with that. So I'm not super surprised to hear this. Neither of us are. I mean, we talked about it last time. We're here for the movies. We're here for the shows. We're here for the IP that comes with that. So
Mm.
not terribly surprising. Still disappointing. Kind of. Hopefully that means they're going to divest, but we'll see. We'll see.
Next up on the list, which I will mostly hand over to Patrick, because
Mm.
other than knowing about Katamari existing, I don't know much about this one.
Mm. Yeah, so this next one is about the creator of Katamari, of the Katamari IP, Keita Takahashi. Um, he, uh, gosh, I'm pulling from VGC, an article from Andy Robinson. He has returned to Japan due to disappointing sales of his most recent original game and suggested that his future as a game designer is unclear. So, to kind of clue y'all in, he just put out an indie game earlier this year called To a T. Um, Very odd game where this you play as this young boy who's stuck in a T pose, and you're trying to help him get through life stuck in a T pose. It looked fun. It sounds creative. It sounds goofy. It sounds very much like a game from the mind of someone who created Katamari Damacy. Um, and it did not get great reviews. It did not sell very well, so he has had to leave San Francisco to go back to Japan, which is kind of disappointing. But I have to imagine this is a story that's becoming a little bit more common, especially in the indie games department. But especially for someone like this who has that legacy in gaming, kind of sucks to hear. Um, so yeah, that's kind of all I have on
Did
that.
he tell us if he is still going to be making games or is he done?
He, I need to find where he says he's on. Okay, I recently returned to Japan. This is going back to the article that he's being quoted here. I recently returned to Japan. One of the reasons I had to do so was because Suati didn't sell well. This is a risk of being independent, and I'm willing to take it. But I don't think it's a question of niche or traditional. It's a question of whether people like it or not. Uh, he said that he felt it was definitely getting harder for him to make the experimental games that he's known for. My next goal is to support my children and find them a school in Japan. Then, if I feel that I don't belong in the games industry, I'll have to look elsewhere. Um,
Mm.
and then he's even quoted for saying, I wish I still had the Katamari Damacy IP. Anyway, I'm glad that the game and characters are still up today. In many ways, I have some interesting ideas, blah, blah, blah. If I have the opportunity to work with Bandai Namco again, it would be a very interesting project. So I could totally. It seems like he's mostly focusing on helping out his family for the meantime, which is very noble and respectable. I could definitely see him being brought back on to work on future Katamari games. Though it might be a bit because they just put one out this year, but we'll see.
Mhm. Moving on from that, we've got Team Cherry stroking the conspiracy or subtle hints that they don't particularly like Jeff Keighley or the Game Awards. They notably Team Cherry makes Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong, which just came out this year. And like 7 days or so after the Game Awards, they put out a new trailer and released an expansion for uh, Hollow Knight Silksong, which I need to get around to playing, but now I have 2 games plus a DLC to get to. So that's now I'm really behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, this is. I haven't finished Hollow Knight. I'm still working my way through some of that. I don't know if I'm gonna deal a DLC for that. I might. Maybe I just put it in the back burner and just jump straight into Silksong. But they were very. They were pretty clear that expansions were coming to Silksong when they dropped it, which is kind of funny to think about it considering Silksong started as an expansion. But whatever. Um, and I think one of the weird highlights about it too, there's I don't know if they've really given any sort of well, first of all, it's going to be free new areas, bosses, tools, and more. Nautically themed expansion, Sea of Sorrow. They're keeping details a secret. There's no release window. Um, and I could not tell you what the cadence of what the expansions for the OG Hollow Knight were, so I can't really give you any sort of idea of when it's coming out. Um, but what stuck out to me with this press release that they put out, I think this was today or yesterday, is that Hollow Knight's getting a Nintendo Switch 2 version. Um,
Hmm.
and I do believe that that's a free update. It's mostly just, performance stuff.
Yep, anyone
There's.
who owns Hollow Knight can get it.
Mm-hmm. So, like me, someone who hasn't finished it yet. So now I can justify me not playing it for when it
There
gets
you go.
updated. So that's coming in 2026 for free if you already own it on Nintendo Switch 1. So very exciting. I need to see if they're also. Yep, so they're updating the PC version of the game as well via public beta branches on Steam and GOG. So yeah, definitely check that out. It looks like an updated aspect ratio, which for a game like Hollow Knight is doing wonders for it. So very excited that Team Cherry's supporting their games and supporting their fans like this. Shout out to them.
Shout out. Following in the footsteps of the controversial footsteps of the Game Awards, we're gonna end the show with our last quick hit on a FPS game that's probably gonna flop and no one really wants. Marathon. Marathon is back in the news because they put out a 20-minute dev diary and they have announced that the game is coming March of 26, I believe is what they said, at 39.99, pricing it similar to Arc Raiders. And that apparently hurt Patrick to his core. They pushed it back for everyone who doesn't know. They were going to release it September of this year. They put out the beta slash alpha, I guess they called it, closed alpha. They got a lot of not enjoyable feedback. And so they delayed it. And now it's coming out, like I said, March 26th. I don't know. I don't. I started to watch the video doc about it. I think it's pretty tough at this point, right? They have the controversy with the stolen art.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the person whose art that is originally did come out and say that that has been settled to their satisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
but it's it's pretty hard to come back from that and everything else. They did say they're adding, proximity chat, which is a big thing that everyone was concerned about, because originally they didn't want it due to it being potentially toxic. But all of these extraction shooters, as you've seen with people like the Burnt Peanut and Arc Raiders and Tarkov, all of the stream clips come from that exact thing, which is the proximity chat. So that's gonna do it some work there, but it's coming into a pretty tough market.
Extremely tough. Like people in the extraction shooter scene will tell you it's Tarkov, but we're really excited for Arc Raiders. So to see that game blow up beyond that community um, with the $40 price tag is saying something. And I cringed when you said that specifically because there's another certain game that also did something similar, and that was also from Sony. That was
Was
Concord. Um,
Yep.
and granted, that's a different situation. That's not an extraction shooter. That's a hero shooter. What a faux Overwatch, if you will. This is going into direct competition with Arc Raiders and Escape from Tarkov. Like, if you think you can put out a game like that with the price point comparable to Arc Raiders, which is very well beloved right now and it's extremely popular, um, you gotta give us more than that. Like, this feels very much like, God, it's just so tough to really quantify. I don't think this is going to succeed, and I don't know what they can do to make it succeed. They're doing good things here by like adding prox chat, which should have been in there from the beginning, but I digress. And just listening to player feedback. I think if they keep doing that, there might be a chance. I think you got to lower that entry point. I think you got to make it free to play, or at least offer a bunch of free demos. I don't know. But as is right now, I really don't see there being a way forward for this game to survive. But I hope I'm wrong
Yeah, I
because
think
I do like Bungie, but we'll see.
I do think. I mean, I think the hardest part is this is another version, like my joke at the beginning,
Hmm.
uh, of they're just mashing things together, right? Like the big difference between this and Tarkov, which are both first-person extraction shooters, is this is a hero extraction shooter. And in what everyone experienced of it, that was not a highlight.
Nope.
So it's hard when, the stuff that is supposed to be selling your game is not necessarily is not necessarily helping with that. So they're in a weird spot. We'll see what happens. It's Bungie, right? I mean, Bungie, they created Halo, they created Destiny. I guess they did Marathon originally years and
Mm-hmm.
years and years and years ago. Barely anyone remembers that, and now they've got this new kind of offshoot of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Boomers will
so
remember.
they have the potential. I think if anything, you can take solace if you're a fan of this, and you're looking forward to it. That's great. But also, look to Destiny, right? Although Destiny has a somewhat uh, checkered run between its two games, what they've shown is that they can run a game for years and years and years with new content. Uh, and so a game like this, an extraction shooter where they want you to put hours and hours and you keep playing it and it's endlessly replayable, they know how to do that piece of it pretty well. I'm not going to call it amazing, but pretty well. And so that's kind of something to look forward there. All
Mm-hmm.
right, that's our final story. Do we want to do games we're playing on the way out? Because I have a good one to go along with this. If you have one that you want to talk about.
You go first while I think about that.
Okay. Uh, Part of what we do here is just talk about different games that we're playing because it's not only about the news, but also just about loving games in general. And hopefully, some of the games that we talk about, you guys won't already know. Today, I want to talk about Escape from Duckov,
Mm-hmm.
which was in the Game Awards, and is also an extraction shooter, but a very different kind of extraction shooter. So this is a top-down, think Gun Touchables or like Black Ops Arcade, uh, that kind of top-down gun shooting extraction shooter where you play as a duck who has to go out into these different maps to gather his loot and extract and kill other ducks. It's incredibly fun. uh, it is like the perfect amount of ridiculous but also uh, testing the limits of your ability for the extraction shooter, right? Because part of what makes extraction shooters so good is the uh, difficulty, but this does that while also maintaining the absurdity of you're a duck in a duck world, and doing all of this kind of stuff. It's a ton of fun. I love it. It's what I play when I'm sitting down at my computer to play something. What do you got over there, Patrick?
Well, I haven't been playing a whole lot of games between when we all last hung out at the Game Awards and now I really haven't touched games at all. It's mostly been One Piece card game for me, but
Mm-hmm.
the ones that I'm really itching to get back to is Expedition 33. I'm knocking on the door of the end of Act 2. I'm I don't want to say anything for spoilers' sakes, but I'm at a spot where you could see this being the end of the game, and I know it's not, so I'm very excited. Um, and then that's the big one that I want to get back to. I re-downloaded Divinity Original Sin 1 with the reveal of the new Divinity game because I want to play a CRPG. I want to play something like that. I even downloaded Disco Elysium on my PlayStation because I've never gave that game a fair shot and I want to get back to it. So I'm really in the mood for something very role play y, very classic role playing games. So those are it's between Divinity and Expedition 33 that I'm really focused on right now. So those are the big ones. But
Nice. I Is that a duo Original Sin 1 playthrough coming? Probably not on the channel, but
oh,
potentially Patrick
oh,
Austin playthrough.
oh, oh! I remembered another one.
Ooh.
Um, um, we played. I played a little bit of Arc Raiders with a couple of buddies of ours just recently, and I don't know what it was about this run, but it really sparked my interest, and I like it now. I like this game quite a bit, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm itching to get back into it. Um, so yeah, I'll put that up there too, wherever my list is.
There you go. His list of, I think we got to 4 games there.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for us this week. Thank you guys for watching. If you like what we're doing here, we're going to be doing this for now. We're talking every 2 weeks with the potential for an emergency podcast if something big comes out In the meantime, you can follow us here on YouTube, also on Twitter, though we don't post on there, I guess, too much these days. Maybe it'll come back. Who knows?
We'll see.
But we'll also be putting out clips and also shorts and all of that in case you can't get to the whole podcast. We're also available on YouTube Music. If you can't watch the video itself and you want to be able to just listen, because mostly you're just seeing our faces on the screen, you can see us there. Other than that, we will see you next week, or 2 weeks, I guess.
Ooh, thanks for watching. Bye.